Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Incentive Compensation, the Key to Higher Profits, hosted by Deltek and AEC. I'm Jeremiah McNicholas, Marketing Manager here at Deltek. And before we begin, I'd like to cover just a few quick administrative items. So first, the presentation will be about 30 to 40 minutes, and then we're going to open the floor up for questions. So if you do have any questions, go ahead and enter them in the question and answer window, and we will address those at the end. To maintain audio quality, we have muted all attendees. So again, just enter your questions in that question and answer window. Also, please remember to fill out the short survey at the end of the webinar. All registered attendees will receive a recording and the PowerPoint slides from today's presentation within 24 hours of the presentation. And if you have any technical issues, please use the help icon on the bottom of the console for more information. Joining me today is Herb Cannon, President of AEC Management Solutions. Herb, go ahead and take it away.
Well, thank you, Jeremiah. First of all, I want to thank you for allowing me once again to contribute to one of their fine webinars that they're well known for. Before we get started, a little bit about myself. I've been in this business for over 25 years now. Started out with a large engineering firm in Oradell, New Jersey, a 2,000-person engineering firm, of which I was the controller of their architectural division that had about 100 employees. From there, I was the chief financial officer and then ultimately the chief operating officer of Ehrenkrantz, Eckstadt, and Kuhn Architects, offices in New York City, Washington, D.C., and Los Angeles. In 2000, I started my own consulting practice, and my practice is dedicated to helping architects and engineers earn the profits that they deserve for all of their creative efforts. Over the years, I've been a featured speaker for Deltek, Axiom, and all these other organizations that you see here. Currently, I'm doing a lot of seminars, my Practical Project Management Seminar, my Pathway to Profits Seminar, my Ownership Transition and Valuation Seminar, and then a lot of work on incentive compensation and strategic plan facilitation. Coming to a city near you, you can see what they are, Nashville, Minneapolis, and so forth. All of these sessions are approved by the AIA, and the Ownership Transition is 3 credits, Pathway to Profit 7, Practical Project Management 6. If you need any more information about that, please visit my website. Today's session, it's the big question. Why would any firm want to have an incentive compensation plan? If I'm the sole owner or it's me and a partner or two, why would I want an incentive compensation plan? Why would I want to share the profits that I'm making with my employees? And I think the real key reason for that, what I've discovered is many firms are underperforming financially, and incentive compensation is what can really drive them to that next level. And while I, as an owner, may not be keeping 100% of the profits, ultimately, the dollars I'm going to put in my pocket are going to be greater than they would otherwise, even if I was keeping 100%. And, that's kind of the challenge we have sometimes in convincing owners of, going ahead with an incentive plan. But, the idea is that, not only I as an owner will make more money, but the employees will also make more money for themselves. For an incentive plan, there's a lack of firm-wide profits. The industry average, over the last 25, 30 years has been about 10 to 12% profit on net revenues. Some years more, some years when times are tough, you're lucky to get a 4 or 5% profit. Generally the lack of firm-wide profitability is a key issue. On top of that, there could be a wide disparity of profits amongst partners, offices, project managers. I've met firms that have 6 partners. One partner is making $1 million a year of profits on their projects. Another one's losing $500,000 a year on their projects. Another one's losing $200,000. Another one's making a $250,000 profit, and some people are breaking even. If everyone's getting the same base compensation, if they're getting the same salary as a partner, if they're getting the same benefits, if they're getting, the same vacation time, where is the motivation for the partner who's losing the money to turn it around? But more important than that is, where is the motivation for the person who's making the $1 million profit to even stay with the company? They'd be much better off out on their own. They're working as hard as they can. They're rowing that boat, if you will, as hard as they can. And other people are drilling holes in the back. So it's patently unfair when it comes to the economic contributions. We find the same thing. Some some offices are consistently profitable, some project management, but overall, there's a real dissatisfaction with the financial results. And one of the key things to remember is that a bonus plan is not an incentive plan. When I conduct my seminars, and in my Pathway to Profit seminar, I talk about incentive compensation, and I ask the attendees, how many people here have an incentive plan at their office? And a bunch of people raise their hands. And I say, well, tell me about it. Well, generally what they describe is a bonus plan, not an incentive plan. And I went on a couple days ago as I was polishing up these slides to get to what is the definition of a bonus versus an incentive. A bonus is something in addition to what is expected or is strictly due. A money or an equivalent given in addition to an employee's usual compensation. And the problem with a bonus plan is that generally it's so convoluted that people don't understand exactly what they need to do to earn that bonus. Generally it's subjected to a lot of subjective criteria. An incentive is something that incites or has a tendency to incite to determination or action. Something that encourages a person to do something or to work harder. Okay, so there is a difference. When I've seen other bonus plans that firms have, they have this checklist, and it's years of service, their attendance, design quality, utilization rates, how much of their time is billable to clients, are they helping out with recruiting, are they involved with marketing, and as you look through this, there's a lot of things here that are open to subjective criteria. So the partners or the powers that be get into an office sometime between Thanksgiving and New Year's, and they rate everybody on a scale of 1 through 10 of each of these criteria. Somehow they magically allocate these bonuses to people. And so here I am, I'm a rank and file employee, and maybe last year I got a $2,500 bonus. I'm not sure why I got it, but I got a $2,500. The following year, it comes and I only get $2,000, and I have no idea why I got less. The problem, a bigger challenge with a discretionary, a subjective bonus plan is that the overachievers tend to be under-rewarded, and the underachievers tend to be over-rewarded. We tend to squish everyone towards that middle when it's more subjective criteria. When I'm working with a firm for an incentive plan, many times I'll go in, I'll start working with them, and they're really not set up for an incentive plan. There are some prerequisites before we can have an effective incentive plan. Number one, we need to have confidence in the financial information, because I guarantee you the first thing that's going to happen when you implement an incentive plan, all of a sudden those people that were not interested in the money, they weren't interested in the numbers, you're going to have a whole firm full of financial experts. All right? And the first thing they're going to do is they're going to attack the numbers. All right? So we want to make sure that the numbers we're producing are good. As a matter of fact, that's how I kind of developed a very close relationship with my friends with the Agera software and with the Vision software. Now, so a lot of firms are using QuickBooks or something else like that that really wasn't producing good project-based or profit center information. And kind of the first step in all this was to get a good accounting project management software in there. We need to have timely and accurate financial reporting. Here we are, it's August 30th today, and we're just getting, reports for July or reports for 2 or 3 weeks ago. It's not great, right? If they want me to perform better, if they want me to earn more money for the company, I need to have current information available. I mean, we need to have confidence in our financial and project management software. We need to create a culture where there's open communication at all levels of the company. Right? Hey, where someone has a problem on a project, it's not the project manager's problem, not the partner's problem, it's everyone's problem. So we need to create a culture where people will bring forward the challenges that they're having on a project, and they can have access to, for lack of a better way, the best minds in the company, those with the most experience and expertise to help them through that. I have something that's also called my project management business reviews. Okay, that's something we need to have a regular schedule where we're reviewing what percent complete versus what percent spent we have on a particular project. We need to have confidence in our accounting personnel. So these are a lot of things that we've needed to clean up as I work with firms on incentive compensation. Some of the key issues that we address in incentive compensation is, number one, bad debt. We want to reduce, eliminate bad debt. We want to collect our money a lot sooner. So generally, one of the rules that I have is anything over a certain number of days old in accounts receivable, that's counted as a bad debt against your project or your profit center until such time that you collect it. We need to look at our billing rates. We need to make sure that our net multiplier allows us to have at least a 25% built-in profit rate into our actual hourly rates. Some firms haven't updated their billing rates for years. So that's something that needs to be looked at closely. When we have an incentive plan, there's also great motivation on the part of people to clean up not to do work without some sort of written authorization. Okay, even if it's just an email acknowledgement saying, yes, this is what we would like you to do. This is the amount that you're going to get paid. Just some sort of acknowledgement of that in email. Like in a perfect world, we want the signed, sealed, delivered contract. Unfortunately, that's not the real world that we live in. We also want to clear up some of the ambiguous contract language that we may have in our proposals and contracts. For example, one of my favorite ones from the AIA says something along the lines, if the architect performs additional scopes of work, they may be entitled to additional compensation. Well, you know what? Let's cross out the word may in that sentence and put in the word shall be entitled to additional compensation. All we're doing with that word may is setting ourselves up for potential negotiations. And who are we negotiating it with? We're negotiating with people that are well-trained in negotiation. They're business people, they're our clients, they're institutions. Their job is to negotiate. One of the biggest things that we find with incentive compensation is a great motivation to stop that unpaid scope creep. We love scope creep as long as we're paid for it, right? But we're unlikely to go ahead and do work that's outside of the scope of the contract if it's going to directly affect our personal income. There could be a real lack of incentive at the partner level, kind of like what I talked about at the beginning of the session. There could be a lack of accountability at all levels of the company. So either directly or indirectly, these are kind of the issues that we clean up as we implement an incentive compensation plan. In the big picture, we want to differentiate someone's contribution as an employee versus the benefits of being an owner. When I do these plans, I like to start at the top down. You start at the top with an incentive plan, and you then push it down throughout the rest of the organization. Because, the rank and file people that work, they're going to respond to what's important to the owners of the company. If the owners of the company don't care about money, they're not going to care about money. The owners of the company don't care about doing out-of-scope work without compensation, they're not going to care about it either. So we need to implement that incentive at the top of the company. Ownership provides a return on investment. So you get an increase in your capital account, you get a dividend, just as if we're in the public stock market, right? You have these undistributed profits. We've invested our money in the stock market. We expect a dividend or some increase in the value of our stock. An owner's contribution as an employee is rewarded with salary, benefits, and part of their compensation is the incentive plan. In successful incentive plans, everyone must understand what results are rewarded. And the key word there is results. So we don't want to make it a secret plan. We want to be fairly transparent about what someone needs to do in order to earn an incentive payment. Economic contributions receive economic rewards. You make more money for me, I'm going to share a portion of that with you. Hey, if you do some non-economic efforts, it's non-economic rewards. Maybe they give you that. You come in, you clean up the periodicals library, you organize the Christmas party. We'll account for that somewhere outside of the incentive compensation plan with some other sort of reward. We want consistent reinforcement of the rewarded results. One of the challenges that we have is when someone puts in an incentive plan, they say, well, Herb, what we're going to do, we'll start January 1st. It'll run all through 2017. Then in 2018, when we have our final financial statements, we'll then make a distribution. The problem with that is that if we tell them that, right after Labor Day, no one's going to believe it until they actually get the check. All right? No, a year from now is like forever, particularly the younger that you are. A year seems like 2 months seem like forever. But, so what we want to do is, I prefer quarterly distributions, quarterly payments on incentives. So we work January through March. By the end of June, we'll get some sort of incentive distribution based upon our results of the first quarter. And I think the rewards must be significant. Right? The more the reward, the more people are going to respond to it, the better results that the company's going to get. It should encourage recruitment and retention. Hey, if we're paying market rate salaries, plus we have an incentive plan on top of it, hey, we're going to get like-minded people attracted to our firm that want to make some more money. As I talked about, if we're going to distribute the incentive payment 3 months after the end of the quarter, I only do it if you're still with the company. So it encourages retention. You need to stay those extra 3 months to earn your incentive payment. And by the time you've got that payment, you've already earned another one. So people are encouraged to stay with the company. It should be simple to administer. My rule of thumb, I don't care whether it's a 10-person firm or a 500-person firm, it should take one person no more than 1 day to do the calculations. There should be an opportunity for all key personnel to earn an incentive. And by not making it a stealth plan, we need to be relatively transparent. Hey, exactly what the people need to do in order to earn an incentive payment. We want to make sure the quality of design is not compromised. We're in this for the long term, so we need to have some people, some senior people that recognize that we're in it for the long term, and if we need to redo the design once, twice, 3, 4, 5, 123 times, we're going to do it until we're happy with the design that we're producing. In this business, about 75% of our business is from repeat clients. So the last thing we want to do is shortchange a client for a short-term gain. And we don't want to limit the incentive amount. I've heard people, when somebody makes $5,000 or $10,000, that's enough. That's enough. Well, you know what? If I'm paying someone a $10,000 incentive payment at the end of the first 3 months of the year, I don't want them to stop doing what they were doing. If they're earning a $10,000 incentive, I'm earning a lot more than that as the owner of a company. So I want them to keep what they're doing. I want to pay everybody large incentives because that means the company's making a large So we don't want to limit the incentive amount. Incentive compensation does not reward effort. Hey, Herb comes in, he works really hard. Boy, he works some long hours too. Right? He's there, 10, 12 hours a day many times. And he's been here a long time. And we like him. He's a nice guy. We know he needs the money too. He has 3 daughters, college and weddings to pay for, so we know he needs the money. For non-economic contributions to the company or meeting minimum performance standards. That's what people are getting their base pay and other benefits for. It does reward positive economic results, profitability, and increasing the value for the stockholders or partners in the firm. When you first look at an incentive plan, you need to, I'm a big believer in dividing things up into pools. And here I just have like these 3 different pools that I'm talking about. And, my initial calculations, I like to divide it up into a third each. And we can play with those numbers as we see what it looks like. But this is generally my initial distribution. I want to have 1/3 for retained earnings. And retained earnings just mean, hey, you know what? I want to keep some profit here in the company so we can continue to grow. One of the great things about a company that is profitable is that, you can invest it back into the company. We can provide the best design tools, the best computer equipment, we can recruit the best employees, we can pay top salaries. So we want to have that money in the company. And when we do that, when we reinvest in the company, we invest in better marketing materials, better photography, some public relations. When we do that, we wind up with bigger and better projects that make more money. So it becomes like a snowball effect. I want to have 1/3 go for the partners incentive pool and 1/3 to the employee pool. And I said, well, Herb, listen, we have some partners here or some senior people that are, they're not really involved with projects. They're managing the company. Okay, well, we call them the non-revenue partner or the managing partner or the chief operating officer, and they're not really responsible for revenue-producing projects. The revenue partners, they are responsible for revenue-producing projects. So what we want to do, how we want to reward that person who's the managing partner or chief operating officer, we want to establish a minimum expectation of a profit percentage. We're going to call that the target profit. And to the extent that our profit exceeds the target profit percentage, that non-revenue partner, typically a managing partner, receives a percentage of the excess. And sometimes to convince this person to go along with it, it needs to be substantial. 25% of that excess. So if the target profit is an average of 12%, and we come in with a 20% profit, right? There's 8% excess of the 12%. This person, by getting 25%, would get that extra 2%. We go directly. And they're responsible for looking out for the overall good of the company. They're really responsible for the long-term interests of everyone. Now, the revenue partners, I want to reward them on the basis of their profit center results as it relates to the firm-wide profit. So here, if we have partner A has a $20,000 profit, B has a $50,000 profit, and C has a $30,000 profit. So, nice easy math here. A gets 20% of the pool, B gets 50%, and C gets 30% of that pool. Pretty straightforward. Well, Herb, what happens if someone loses money? Well, it's been known to happen. So what we do is we exclude that person from the calculation of how the revenue partner pool is distributed. So partner A in this example has a $30,000, B has a $70,000, C has a $50,000 loss. Partner C does not participate in the distribution, and we divide up that revenue partner pool 30% and 70% respectively. And I've been using the term partner here. You know what? We can do the same thing at the project manager level. We set up a bonus pool, or I should really call it an. We're going to handle that same as the partner level plan. Project managers, for lack of a better word here, compete for distributions based upon their relative profitability. A location-based plan can handle the same as the non-revenue partner plan. For someone who's managing a location, establish a target profit. Reward the person in charge of the office for exceeding the target profit. The employee incentive pool, you can divide those up into subcategories. So here, in this example, I have what's called the senior associates, the associates and project managers, and all other employees. What we want to do here in this pool, everyone here competes for their percentage of the pool based upon their relative salaries earned during that period of time. So we have the technical and admin staff here, right, basically non-titled people. They're going to compete for their salaries based upon, they're going to go January through March, how much did everyone earn? What did that total up to? And what percentage is each individual of that total pool? And that's what percentage they'll get of the employee pool. We can do it the same way with project managers. We can do it the same way with senior staff. And what we try to do is, as we establish these pools, we want the typical project manager, if they're not rewarded on an incentive basis, competing for to compete for their profits. We want the project managers on average to get twice as much as a technical or admin staff, and we want senior staff to get twice as much as a project manager. So for example, we have a technical staff getting $1,000 on average. We want project managers to get $2,000. We want senior staff to get $4,000. So just a simple way of dividing that up and recognizing that the higher up in the organization, the more influence you have over the company and project profitability. The benefits of the plan, it really helps with employee recruitment. People, if you're paying good salaries, plus you have the incentive, people that feel as though they want to be rewarded on that basis, you'll really help with recruiting. It helps with the employee retention, right? We have our salaries, we have the incentive. Many times they actually need to take a pay cut to move somewhere else once you count in the incentive. Also, don't forget, if they leave, no matter what point they leave, they will be walking away from some sort of incentive that they've earned. It helps with employee morale. Hey, every 3 months, boy, you're getting that check. That's pretty good stuff. It also helps with your family morale, by the way. Your family starts to expect that every 3 months you bring home a nice little check. We talked about the golden handcuff that has to do with walking away from your money. One thing that I never really anticipated, the profitability has increased dramatically in so many firms. It's really enabled them to make increased contributions to their retirement plan. What would you expect if you put in a plan? Number one, you're going to get increased profits. It's almost like automatic. One of the big things that happens right away is we try to identify all that unpaid scope creep that we've been working on current projects, and all of a sudden we're going to start asking for some of that money, and we'll be successful at getting some. So our profits will definitely increase. Underachievers are, they're going to challenge the fairness of the plan. They're going to want to be rewarded on some other basis. They need to be prepared for that. And, basically I'm saying, hey, if you're not making more money from the company, what am I supposed to do? Take it away from someone who is earning more money for the company and give it to you? As I mentioned before, everyone, all of a sudden, they're going to understand the numbers. The people that came to you and said, Herb, I don't care about the money. I just want to be an engineer. I just want to be an architect. I don't want to be involved with the money. What? What they're really saying is, Herb, I don't care about your money. When you make it their money, everyone is going to understand the numbers. You're going to get an increased net multiplier. How? Because you're going to stop or eliminate a lot of that unpaid scope creep. You're going to make it paid scope creep, meaning that you're going to start getting paid more for the same amount of labor that you're already putting in. You're going to reduce the unpaid out-of-scope services. You're going to increase your revenue. You could actually see some changes in overhead. It's certainly feasible that your overhead rate could go up. Once I do a submission for 100% CDs on a project, I'm not going to have people hanging around making things more perfect unless I really need them to. And if I don't have other work for them, I'm going to get them onto some of those long-term overhead projects that I've been waiting for people to have time to do, updating our project sheets, updating our standard detail library, something like that. Rules to live by. The company must be profitable year to date before any distributions are made. Hey, if the company is losing money overall, we can't, be borrowing money or going into retained earnings to pay our distributions. Individual partners or profit centers or project managers must be profitable year to date before any distributions are made. Any accounts receivable over 90 days is considered a bad debt for the purposes of this plan. Once we collect the money, you're going to get credit for that back. I never want to take, some people, I've heard arguments that, if they don't collect it, maybe they should never get it back. Well, I never want to take away the incentive for collecting the money. I've seen people penalized and maybe they only get back 95%, 90%. That doesn't really thrill me either, but I like it a lot better than not giving it back to them altogether. The distributions are made by the end of the following quarter, and the employee must be with the company when the bonus is distributed. Okay, what reports have I used for the incentive calculations? I certainly, when I was using Deltec Vision, was something I'm very, very familiar with. I was using you can run your income statements by profit center. By profit center, meaning you can set it up by partner, you can set up different codes, there's lots of different ways to do that. At the project level, we would, or a profit center level, you can use the office earnings report. If we don't have separate profit centers set up, we can put in different select codes or run it by principal. So there's a lot of different ways that we can run these reports that will really generate the profitability under each category relatively easily if you set it up right. Okay, a couple of success stories. One was many years ago, was an architecture firm in the Northeast, wide range of markets, both domestic and international, one office, at the time 175 employees. The ownership was somewhat dispersed, 2 employees owning a controlling interest, and profits were historically low, less than 5% of net revenues. And one of the real challenges here is one of the person who was the chief operating officer and managing partner, we need to convince him, even though we own 35, 40% of the company, is to take less than that in order to contribute something to the incentive plan. And the fact of the matter is, as we went through it, they weren't really distributing that much money anyway. So, there was really nothing to lose.
Herb, I think we lost your audio. Are you still there?
Hello, can you hear me?
We got you back.
All right, sorry about that. Okay, I understand that we lost the audio for a minute there, and that's a problem on my end, not the fine folks at Deltek. This is a Herb Cannon problem. But that's been corrected, and what we're going to do here is I'll just back up a little bit and go through this. You know, the challenge we had was convincing here someone in this success story to accept less than their ownership percentages as a distribution. And once we were able to do that and implement it, immediately they went up to about a 16% profit on net revenues from 5%. After a year, it was 25%, and then some of those really, really good years, 2006, 2007, first part of 2008, they're making a 35 to 40% profit on net revenues. And the firm has grown over time to about 350, 400 employees because they were reinvesting a good portion of it back into the company for the things that we talked about before. Another one was a full-service engineering firm and architecture. They had multiple offices. They actually had 10 offices located across the Midwest and South. The ownership was widely dispersed with no one person owning more than 15%. Profits were historically 8% of net revenues. And again, they had about 8% profit. They went up to 16%, then up to 25% after the first 6 months or so. And they've exceeded over 20% profit consistently for the last 6 or 7 years that they've had this in their office. So it's worked well for them. You know, the way that they actually, a little twist on this was they had a 3-person kind of committee that ran the company. It was the chief executive officer, the chief operating officer, and the chief financial officer. So in this scenario, they kind of took the place of the managing partner and had a separate pool. So they actually had that managing partner pool, if you will, divided up amongst them, where the CEO got 55%, the chief operating officer got 35%, and the chief financial officer 10%. So there's lots of ways to kind of fine-tune this concept. You know, the intention here is to give you a general outline of what a baseline would be, and then you can modify it. And you know, as time goes on in these plans, they evolve. We find new distinctions, and it evolves from there. Implementation. You know, review this materials, talk with your partners, talk with other people in your company. Get their buy-in, at least to the concept. You want to clean up your financial reporting. Like I said, people are going to challenge the numbers. Start a regular process where you're sitting down and reviewing the project financials with each of your project managers. Every 2 weeks is my recommendation. See what distributions would look like based upon past performance. Maybe you want to do last year, last quarter, do a couple of iterations of that, see what it looks like. See if you make any distinctions. That's kind of strange, you know. Some people you think that always do well might not be doing quite as well when you actually look at the numbers. And some people that you thought aren't doing that well might be doing a little bit better. You want to we want to start the implementation at the highest level of the company, right? Those are the people that have the most influence on profitability. Fine-tune it to meet your individual needs, and then push it down. Remember, the key thing is to reward those economic results with economic rewards. I have my contact information here, and if you have any questions, please feel free to send me an email. And I think, Jeremiah, we're open for questions now?
Yes, we are. So at this time, if you have any questions, go ahead and enter those into the question and answer window. We will go ahead and by Herb. So here's a good one, Herb. Can you give bonus results 2 or 3 weeks after quarter end, then delay payouts to quarter end, or is it better to pay out when the results are presented?
Yeah, I like paying out when the results are presented. You could do it either way. I don't know why you would want to tell people what they're going to get and then not get it. You know, if you're getting a good amount, I could see that being positive. If you're getting a crummy amount, that might be a telegraph of, hey, it's time for me to leave because I'm not really walking away from very much anyway.
Right, so you want the instant gratification there, right? As soon as the info's out there, you want the payment.
Yeah, I want to coincide, yeah.
Here's a question about your ownership and transition valuation seminar. Do you have the dates on those handy?
Yeah. You know what? There are a bunch of you know what? I happen to have my new brochure. I'll rattle them off quickly. We have Nashville, September 9th, Minneapolis, September 16th, New York, September 23rd and December 9th, Atlanta, December 30th, Seattle, October 7th, Houston, October 21st, Los Angeles, October 28th, Charleston, November 4th, Denver, November 18th, San Francisco, December 2nd. I'm going to have a lot of frequent flyer miles. And I am the one who does. I do all of these seminars myself, so it's not like you get somebody else.
And you do a great job with them. And if you missed any of those, you can find those details, I'm sure, on aecmanagementsolutions.com.
Absolutely. All my seminar dates are there.
Can you talk about incentives amongst partners with vastly different ownership percentages? Is there no recognition of percentage ownership at all in incentives, or what's the best way of working that out?
Well, yeah, you could have different levels of incentive if there's a wide disparity in ownership. You know, where junior partners maybe have more would earn someone less than the more senior people. But don't forget, we have that one big pool there that if we're putting 1/3 in retained earnings, well, that's really allocated on the basis of ownership. All right, so while we call it retained earnings, at the end of the year or at some point, we're probably going to be distributing a portion of that, and the retained earnings is distributed on the basis of your ownership percentage.
Great. So here's another great question here. We have an incentive program, but some of the partners have concerns about how the system creates silos, and there's concerns about a lack of synergy between. Do you have any suggestions for ways to prevent those kind of concerns?
Well, you know, I've seen that is not an uncommon concern that people have. That people are going to be competitive with each other, they're going to be withholding things, keeping things to themselves, and it really does set up competition. But it's in my experience, it's a collegial, friendly competition. Where there's many. One firm that had 8 different partners. 2 partners actually wound up teaming up together to pursue overseas work and open up new markets for themselves. So I've seen it work both ways. You can make it for more teamwork. You can make for less teamwork. But just like, we talked about that we're in it for the long term, and we need to have someone that looks out for the overall long-term interests of our clients and our company, and not just focused on short-term profits. And we think maybe you need to have someone who oversees and makes sure that these silos don't happen.
Great, that makes a lot of sense. So what do you know about the tax implications of incentives paid a quarter after they're earned? Must the paychecks be restated, or are there any tax implications for paying them out following a quarter following the earning?
Not that I know. I mean, there's you could be a partnership, a sole proprietorship, corporation, an S corporation. So I mean, there's a lot of different things there. But generally, mainly when we're concerned about cash basis tax liabilities for the company, we try to manage that at year end. So it's kind of a one-shot year-end concern.
Right. So let it shake out at the end of the year when you're doing it.
Yeah. So that final distribution that you're making at the end of the year, you kind of take all of those things into account to minimize the tax consequences at the company level.
Great. Here's a good one regarding business development types. So do you encourage an incentive compensation plan for those who focus solely on business development? And if so, kind of where do they fall? What type of incentive compensation would be set up for someone?
Yeah, people that are strictly business development, one thing that I've had a hard time justifying, and I don't know how you can, is rewarding someone on the basis of, let's say you have someone in the marketing department that's involved with marketing and they're helping to bring in work. There's so many people involved in the success of bringing in work. It's kind of hard to reward people for that. Certainly at the partner level, it's your job to bring in work. But that being said, if there is a way, if you do want to have a need or desire to reward someone involved with business development, you can, set some sort of target, just like we did for the revenue partner. And to the extent that they or a group of people have helped to exceed that target, we can give them, allocate some sort of money to that sort of pool. I could see that being a possibility.
Excellent. Here's an interesting question. So usually project profitability is compromised by the amount of hours dedicated to the project by the team, which in some ways may not incentivize putting work towards the project and thus compromising quality. Do you have any thoughts on how to encourage quality of work in addition to getting the work done most efficiently?
I'm not really clear on the question. I don't necessarily believe that project profitability is directly related to hours. I mean, there's some correlation, but I think there's a lot of wasted hours on projects. Some of it of our own doing, and some of it is client directed. So, what I've seen over the years is, much more of our work, probably 75-80% of the work that we do is all some sort of fixed fee or percentage of construction, where there's really a built-in incentive for us to get things done as quickly and efficiently as possible. And like I said, we need to go back and we need to take the long-term view that someone needs to be the arbiter of, does this represent the quality of work that our firm stands for? And if it doesn't, we need to go back and we need to fix it and we need to make it better. It's not all about the money.
Right.
It's about, there's three legs of the stool, that I call it, that support, these professional services that we provide. Number one, we want to meet or exceed our clients' expectations. Number two, we want to be professionally satisfied with our work. We want to be work that we're proud of. And number three, we want to have a fair return, fair profit to the people who own the company for all the risk and all the value that they're contributing. So those are the three things, and you really don't want to compromise on any of them.
Right, that makes sense. So how do you account for contracts, clients, or fees that are purposely low, and maybe under one particular project manager? Projects like maybe for a nonprofit or a historically favored client? Maybe one manager has just projects that are purposely low contract?
Yeah, well, yeah, if there's a firm-wide commitment to doing this sort of work, and most firms have that, and I support that. What we want to do then is, so let's say I'm the project manager and I'm managing 4 or 5 projects, and I'm asked to take on one of these ones that at best maybe it'll break even for me. Chances are I'll probably lose a little bit of money. What I would want to do is not include that project in my profit center profit or loss calculations. That project will then become almost like a separate overhead allocation to everyone for the purposes of incentive, or a small additional profit that's allocated to everyone. Does that make sense? Does you follow that?
Makes sense to me.
Okay.
This person has existing bonus programs that do not align with company profits, and the fear is that we may lose employees if we make the change. Have you encountered this, and do you have any encouragement for making the change to tying bonuses to company profit?
Well, but I think there needs to be an education process. Are there some people that will say, oh, this firm's all about the money now. We don't care. We're not rewarding design. We're not doing this. You're going to hear that. There's no question about it. Will someone leave? It's possible. I haven't really seen it. If someone leaves, I don't think it will be so much on principle. It will be on the fact that they don't believe that they can run a project profitably. So rather than own up to the fact, rather than taking a couple days to go to a project management seminar or really learn what it takes to get it done efficiently, yeah, they might leave. So a firm like the person who's asking this question, if you do this analysis, you're probably going to find that the potential people who object to it are not making any money on their projects. And then the company will say, do we want to keep this person here? Do we want to risk losing a person who loses money on their projects? Or do we want to just keep this person here and subsidize them?
That makes sense. Similar to the question about business development, in terms of HR, HR is usually ancillary but still direct to generating revenue as a result of locating talent. Do you have any suggestions for incentive compensation for someone in an HR role?
Well, not directly. Generally, what I would do is I would put them into the head of it. It's still relatively larger sized company. I'd put them into the senior staff pool that I referred to. Right? Remember, we had non-titled personnel. We had like project managers and associates in another pool, and then we had senior staff. I would probably put the HR person in the senior staff category and reward them on the basis of relative salaries.
Okay, that makes sense. Do you still recommend doing like annual salary increases? I mean, obviously, incentive compensation isn't the only benefits package someone's going to provide. Do you still encourage doing salary increases annually and other things?
Yeah, absolutely. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're paying market rate salaries. Okay. Now, that being said, I've seen some firms that they don't pay market rate salaries, and it's much more incentive based. That's kind of the rarity. It's not the normal way of doing it. I've had a client of mine in the Las Vegas area who, an engineering firm, and this is probably 12 years ago. He said, the highest salary in his firm is $75,000, including him. But his average project manager made almost $200,000 a year when you included the incentive payments. So that was very incentive driven, but that's not my preference. My preference is market rate salaries, and incentive on top of it. Now, the whole thing about an incentive plan, we get back to the question before or a number ago where, some people might feel like it's not fair or something like that. If you're paying market rate salaries, you're not punishing anyone, right? You're not punishing anyone. If I get an incentive payment and you don't, I'm not punishing you. You're still getting your salary. So, unfortunately, people don't tend to look at it that way. They view it, some people, people might view it as but it's not a punishment. I'm paying you whatever your salary is, same as you get somewhere else. All we're doing is providing you an opportunity to earn more if you choose to do so.
Right, it's a bonus, icing on the cake.
Yeah, it's not a bonus. I don't like bonus. It's an incentive. It's an incentive for you to make more money.
We've got time for one more question here. I apologize if we weren't able to get to your question, but feel free to reach out to Herb if you do have further questions we weren't able to address. But last question here. So how would you calculate the incentive for staff who move from project to project rather than working on projects in a quarter? Do you have any suggestions for someone who's kind of bouncing around between projects?
Well, first, we didn't really talk about an incentive below like the project manager level for someone who bounces around to projects. So if it's someone who bounces around, there's a couple of ways. One, it could be like a very high-level designer that just kind of spreads their efforts out over a lot of projects, and I've seen that at a number of firms. And generally, they go into the senior staff pool. If we really wanted to reward people for the time they spent on projects, I had an engineering firm that actually they would calculate the profits on a project. Then they would look at everyone's direct labor dollars that were put onto a project. And if the dollars that I put on a particular project, let's say, were 5% of the total labor dollars, I would be entitled to 5% of whatever the incentive payment was for that project. So that's real. It was an engineering firm. They wanted to get very detailed. They drilled down, and they had the patience for that. So just two different ways of doing it.
Gotcha. Great. Well, with that, that does conclude today's webinar. So again, unanswered questions will be addressed offline. We would like to also remind you to please fill out the short survey you'll receive after the webinar ends. And a reminder to all of you, you will receive an on-demand recording of today's webinar within 24 hours. We all want to thank you for joining us today, and big thanks to Herb for the great presentation. Please visit www.deltec.com/events for more upcoming Deltec events. Thank you and have a great day.
Jeremiah, thanks to you and all my friends at Deltec. Thank you.
Absolutely, and thank you, Herb. We appreciate everything you do.